Hey friends and digital marketers, this one's for you. I've got 30 seconds to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises. So here are a few things you can do in 30 seconds or less when you manage projects on Wix Studio. You can work in sync with your team on one canvas. You can reuse templates, widgets, and sections across sites. You can create a client kit for seamless handovers and leverage best-in-class SEO defaults across all your Wix sites. Time's up, but the list keeps going. Step into Wix Studio to see more. Hey friends, I'm Scott Hanselman, and it's another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm chatting with Emily Freeman. She's the best-selling author of 2 books, DevOps for Dummies and 97 Things Every Cloud Engineer Should Know. She's a prolific tech speaker going all over the globe talking about technology. She's worked for companies like AWS and Microsoft, and her latest foray is freemanandforrest.com. She's actually doing influencer marketing focusing on enterprise tech. How's it going, Emily?
It's going well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. So influencer marketing, when I think about influencers, it's usually a young person on Instagram that's trying to get me to buy something or a TikTok shop, but you're not focused on tech, you're focused on enterprise tech. So this is influencer marketing for like clouds.
Absolutely. Yes. And it runs the gamut. I mean, we work with cutting edge startups and certainly plenty of AI companies right now, all the way to your massive cloud companies.
When I hear influencer, though, like how is that different than what we used to call word of mouth, like in the 90s?
It's not so different, except that the world has completely changed, right? And so, I mean, we exist in a world where growing up, you and I would look to movie stars or TV shows for our celebrity. And now my daughter's, she believes the most famous person in the world are her favorite YouTube influencers. And that's, Mr. Beast all the way to her favorite, what does she get into? The, what is it called? When you do the rotate, like the cube. Rubik's Cube. She's into Rubik's Cubes. So her Rubik's Cube influencer.
Wow. And now we're certainly seeing the possible deconstruction of Mr. Beast. He's possibly falling apart right now. He's been accused of unsafe filming, and there's a whole sudden crisis in his nice guy empire. It's on the front page of everything right now. Have you heard about
this? I missed this today.
Oh, this is huge. He's actually he's in the New York Times. Inappropriate comments, uncomfortable, bad situation on his sets.
Oh.
There's some weird stuff going on.
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, the point being though that like you just never know when this influencer is going to become what do they say? What do they say? You live long enough until you die a hero or live to become a villain.
Absolutely. No, and I also think there's something to, the faster you rise, the faster you fall. I've seen a lot of people grow incredibly quickly and then just flame out. And I wonder if that might be in that category.
Well, and the thing that's so interesting also, though, is that, like, these are just regular people. Like, not that Tom Cruise isn't a regular person, but he, like, worked really hard for, like, 40 years to do the regular become a movie star. And I never really felt like he was trying to sell me anything. But, like, 15 years ago, Mr. Beast was just, like, a kid.
That's
just
true.
Hanging out, doing stuff. And most influencers are, and it's amazing how fast they can. Their 15 minutes happens.
Well, but I think that's part of the charm of influencers because they are regular people, and so it feels to some degree. I mean, this parasocial relationship where obviously we know of them, they don't know of us, but there's this closeness or this falsehood of closeness in that where we're like, oh, this is just my friend who's reviewing this thing. Okay, I believe them because I've been following them for so long.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting word. I introduced the term parasocial to like friends probably once or twice a month. That's something that's worth digging into, right? It's a very one-sided connection or an imagined connection where you feel like someone's your buddy.
Has that ever happened to you?
I mean, it happens to me all the time. Like here's a totally random name drop. Like I was at a conference maybe 10 years ago, and I had dinner with Issa Rae and a friend when Issa was doing Awkward Black Girl. So she was a famous YouTuber, but she wasn't Issa Rae movie star. So, and we exchanged phone numbers, and I've got, an old 10-year-old number, and she's like a person who I talked to for the week that we were at the conference. We hung out, we had dinner, and have not spoken to her since. But there's that sense of like, yeah, that's my girl. So when she succeeds, you feel like you're close. Or like, Quinta Brunson would be another great example where that's our internet nerd on BuzzFeed. And everyone's like, oh yeah, the Quinta time on BuzzFeed was the best time. And now she's got Abbott Elementary and it's successful. Or Ayo Adaberry. Like these are all just people that are like our nerds who do well. Or Childish Gambino, it's just like, oh yeah, I remember him when he was just Troy on Community. Those kinds of people, we all feel like we could get him on the phone, but
no,
we could
not. But there is something to that. Like I wonder sometimes if we all sort of need heroes to cheer for. I think you see it right now with the Olympics. Like Ilona Maher is one of my favorite, I guess you could call her an influencer. I love Ilona Maher, and she just won bronze with her team at rugby. Oh
rugby
my gosh.
Player. Yeah.
And she
Yeah. Well, and she spent 4 years being awesome on TikTok from her last time that we all thought she was amazing.
Absolutely.
At the Olympics.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then are we, but like it's healthy to go, oh, I admire that person. I really enjoyed, just as a generational gap, watching Simone Biles. They won gold. They won the gold. And the first thing they did was like, I'm going to do this TikTok. I'm going to do this TikTok. So they like had an overheard thing where the camera people were watching them conspire about the TikToks that they were going to do. Just 5. That was the first thing at top of mind was like, oh, we could do this. We could do that. And now those TikToks are starting to come out.
That is really cool.
And it's like, really? That's your takeaway? Like, but in the past, what did it used to be? It used to be look straight into the camera and say, I'm going to Disneyland. And then collect your check. That was what they did in the 90s. If you were an influencer, right? They would call you and say that's what you have to say if you win the gold medal.
That's wild. Yeah, I wonder sometimes how this impacts our society, this sort of published life. I'm extremely glad that there's no photographic evidence of my teenage years. It's a rumor, not a fact.
Even on a disposable little cheap.
Well, there's random photos in boxes and in my mother's closet, but you can't go to some social and find me at 14. And I wonder how that's impacting things and connectiveness. But regardless of that, this is the world we live in. And, I think most of us are chronically online and we have our favorite people, and influencer marketing is part of that. And Forrest and I are really driving that toward tech because it's huge in fashion and beauty, but it hasn't really landed in tech in the same way. Even though with developer relations, there is this sort of Venn diagram where you're starting to kind of push into that.
My an actual friend, not a person I have a parasocial relationship, but a friend of mine, Franchesca Ramsey, is an actress and a writer and an influencer. And she always does these songs that something will happen and she'll sing a song like, I didn't know that the leopards would come and eat my face. Or one of her great songs is, I would like to know less about you. And it's usually like where, Jada Pinkett or somebody says something that we just not need. And then she will go and sing her song with her ukulele. I would like to know less about you. There is a balance in that parasocial relationship. Like I talk about my kids constantly, but I don't show pictures of them and I don't share their names. That seems conscious as well. So like, what is the right amount of like, yeah, I feel like I know Emily, like, well, but I really don't know Emily at all.
Well, and it's interesting too, because, I am pretty public and I'm pretty open about certain things. And so people then will close that gap and assume that I'm sharing 100% of my life. But in fact, I am really, really private about 10 to 20% of my life. It's just that I do believe in being transparent and being radically human. I am far from perfect. And I think, when I say something, I want to say it with my whole chest. And so, I fumble sometimes and get up again. And I think the more we can kind of share those moments of vulnerability and not being this highlight reel, the more powerful our friendships and relationships become.
Yeah. Watching people that I admire, like Denzel Washington, who's been very public for his whole life, but we don't know anything about him other than he loves his wife. Or Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, as they have cultivated this joke for 20 years that they're deep enemies. But now seeing this kind of very positive masculinity as they sit and have interviews and talk about how much they love each other. is really cool. But it all makes us feel like Ryan Reynolds is our buddy that we could like
Exactly.
call and hang out with.
Yeah, you have to find those boundaries and those lines, right? I mean, obviously, there's a gap between that type of thing where it's like actually believing you could get these people on the phone, and then I think the healthy version of that is really saying, I believe in this person, I've watched this person, I love their work, I feel attuned to them in some way, some kind of connection there, and I want to see them win.
Mm-hmm. So then capitalism comes in. And this is where influence, like I was talking about, I had a viral video on TikTok a couple of weeks ago on 3D printers. And like 90% of the comments were very positive. And a bunch of them were like, oh, this guy's trying to get us to buy this printer. Like I have no relationship with this printer company. There's no TikTok shop link. I had no affiliate link. 1.3 million views. I made $0 on selling printers, which I think is fine and healthy. But then everyone's like, oh, you missed the ball there. You should have totally hooked up with that company. And I was like, I don't know if it would have gone viral if I'd done it that way. I just was excited about the printer. Like legit. I was just stoked.
Well, and
about
I
the
think
printer.
we see a lot of that in tech, with 3D printers and everything else. You have content creators who are already raving about the things that they love. They have newsletters, they have YouTube channels, they have, these short form content around TikTok and Instagram. Obviously Twitter and LinkedIn as well. And so we're already doing the work and talking about things we love. Why shouldn't there be a payment for all of that work? I think just like we got over the fact that, we need to pay open source maintainers. That's important because they're doing work. And if we truly believe that no one should have to work for free, then why wouldn't this be different? Now, the gotcha is that it has to be authentic. And Corey Quinn, I think, is the one who originally said this quote, which is, you can buy my attention, you can't buy my opinion. And I love that. And Forrest and I really focus on that as an ethos. We're making sure that, attention is given to specific products and companies and brands. But outside of that, the content creators are free to really share their ideas. And some of our companies have gotten feedback, and it's been an awesome experience.
I really like that quote. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that fits very well into like my worldview without me actually having done that and thought about that. I think I'm doing it intuitively. Like I don't take a lot of free crap. What I mean? I have a job. I like my job. So I don't like, people don't send me stuff. But a couple weeks ago, Ben Q sent me a monitor. And I'm like, why would Hanselman take a monitor? Because it's the first monitor I've ever seen marketed to programmers. And I was just like, they're always marketing towards like Lightroom and Adobe people and like photographers. And we have the most color correction or gamers. But this one was for programmers. And it was like, I went to their website and they were talking about coding themes and dark mode and like, oh, this is awesome. So I give me a monitor and I did a review. I thought it was really interesting that I had to really catch myself to not, for the negative things I sent about the monitor, I didn't want to like make them feel bad. And I could, so I was feeling myself feel bad because like I have to give my honest opinion about the things I didn't like about the monitor.
Wow. It's actually a great thing.
But I didn't realize it was only like a $500 monitor, right? But I'm still like, oh, gosh, I hope the very nice lady who gave me the monitor is not mad at me for being honest. I could only imagine what that would feel like if you're like MKBHD and some company has bet their entire lives on your review and you don't like it.
I think removing that and really thinking about, Sarah Drasner's always saying clarity is kindness. And I really love that saying and I think about it a lot. And whether it's positive or negative feedback, it's a gift, right? And so these companies are putting themselves out there on the market. They're saying, we would love for you to review it. Of course, you're going to review it authentically and genuinely for your audience. I think that's really healthy to do.
Yeah. So if you're doing this new thing that you're doing, this influencer tech marketing, one of the things that we struggle with when we're just doing regular community outreach is like how to measure stuff. And the simplistic way is always like impressions. But like Twitter not only is a hell site, but it's also completely made up impressions. So like if I do a video and it scrolls by someone's eye, they count that.
Yes.
But then you might have something that has 1 million impressions and like 12 people clicked.
I entered into this having obviously a lot of experience with developer relations and understanding that this kind of reaching technical audiences was a bit squishy. And every company I have worked for has asked me to make a list of influencers or thought leaders or content creators that we needed to target and have them do work. And we've always sort of resisted that because I don't like making lists of my friends. I think there's an ick factor there. And so I haven't participated in that. But I don't know a single company who's not trying to get their AWS heroes or the ambassador programs to write more content, create these mechanisms for evangelism beyond the company. So this has been a demand from the company side for a really, really long time. But thinking through how to measure this gets even more interesting because I think, with developer relations in-house, creating that kind of content, having those feedback loops at a very deep technical point of view is critical. This is not going to replace that, but it does accelerate that work and expand the reach. And so we measure on sort of three topics. It's pure impressions, which I'll come back to your point because you said something really interesting about Twitter and how to measure impressions. Engagement, likes, shares, any kind of comment, that type of thing. And then conversion. So that's clicking on to the link wherever they want to go. And from there, it's a handoff to the client. And we fully expect them and their marketing team and their content team to create a smooth path for developers.
So let me ask you this. Am I correct? I have told my team that I care more about comments than I care about views. Yep. And I would rather have a 10,000 view video with 1,000 excited comments.
Absolutely, with the asterisk that it depends on what your actual goal is, right? And so for me, engagement is really, really important to me. And it is my natural bias. You see it even on my accounts. I go through and I heart every comment. I try and respond to every comment. That is really important to me because for me, it's building a community. It's not just, speaking out into the world. And so there is an important aspect of that because you're not just that scrolling by this empty impression that doesn't lead to anything. People are building trust with you. And I think trust is foundational to those buying decisions, right? So speaking of capitalism, yes, we're all in a sales funnel for everything around us. Where you are in that sales funnel really depends on, okay, do I like this group? Do I trust them? Do I know them? That's sort of the step one. So yeah, it just depends on your campaign. On the flip side, some people really need conversions. If you're a brand new startup and you have limited runway and you need to prove something and have signups, then we focus on the conversion side of that.
It's surprising the ratio of impressions to calls to action. Right. Like I could have thousands and thousands of people listen to this podcast. And then at the end, in 12 or 13 minutes, I'm going to try a new thing where I'm going to ask them to please review the show. And I don't even know how many people are going to make it to the end. You know what I mean? So it's almost like the people who stay at the end, past the end credits of Wolverine. Like if you're this cool, if you're the 3 people left in the theater, would you please review my thing on iTunes?
It's true. Well, and part of this has to do with what we call empty calorie impressions, right? And so we don't lead with Twitter. We don't generally focus on that as a platform because the impression ratio is just outlandish. It's not helpful to anyone. We really focus on groups that have smaller reach, like newsletters are a great example of this. And I'll pick on Cassidy Williams, has this great newsletter. Her reach is much smaller than a lot of different platforms and assets out there, but her engagement is super, super high because she has incredible trust with the community that she's built. And so you're going to have a better experience and it's not going to be just this wasted reach that people are paying for through traditional things like display ads.
Is that what they call pre-qualified leads in the sense of like, not only did I sign up for your newsletter, but I double confirmed that I wanted it because you emailed me and I had to click confirm. Like, I really want your newsletter. This isn't spam. This is tell me all about Cassidy. I am pre-qualified. And rather than a million people scrolling by on Twitter, this is, I don't know, some number of 20,000 people who are just like, yes, more of this, please.
Yeah, I hesitate to put in pre-qualified leads because that would be something like, okay, I am now volunteering to be sold to. That's how I would think about that. Mm-hmm. It's more on the sales side, less on the marketing side. I would put this in marketing, but I think it has to do with, Cassidy to some degree. People, again, it's this relationship, right? We want to see Cassidy win. We want to see her do well. So, if we're going to be engaging with her content, we're also going to be interested in her opinion about all these other brands and products.
It's so funny how my job is to talk about open source in the cloud, but the things that people really like are very like, oh, look at this new Anchor battery. You know what I mean? Or like, oh, buy this backpack. You know what I mean? And I never like tell people go buy a backpack or whatever, but it's like, I will go and put all this work into some cloud or open source content and like no one cares. But then I'll be like, yeah, this is this great new backpack I got. Everyone's like, give me the Amazon link. And I'm like, okay, here's the bag. I love it too.
Well, but you're also, I think the X factor there is really around the commitment to achieve something, right? If you're talking about an open source thing, the commitment, that sort of bar is pretty high. I have to go do a thing and read a thing and then sign up for something versus, oh yeah, I need a backpack. I'm going on vacation this summer. Let me just click buy,
Yeah. And the thing is, though, that if I quit my job and became a full-time backpack influencer, I would have no reason to have a bag, right? Like, this is the thing. You have to, like, the whole, like, show me your travel kit or, like, here's my Nintendo. Like, I had a really popular blog post for, like, all the best travel Nintendo Switch accessories.
That's really fun.
Which was literally, like, all this crap that I bought to make it so gaming on the Switch on the plane doesn't suck.
Yes.
But I would need a reason to get on a plane. So it's good that I keep my day job.
Yes.
So that I can make $30 on Amazon click link things.
Well, and this also highlights something around influencer marketing that I'm super interested in that correlates with developer relations. I was endlessly frustrated working for Microsoft and then AWS in developer relations that I reached the end of my sort of solar system, right? And you reach it pretty quickly. I have the ability to reach out to n number of people, but at some point that is exhausted. And if I'm talking about the same thing over and over again, it doubles down. Your rate of return is going to collapse pretty quickly. On top of that, a lot of our favorite content creators are tinkerers. They're playing with this, they're going over here, they're trying this product, they're doing hardware. And this really allows them, it provides them enough of an incentive to be able to go do that, in a way that makes them feel good. We love that. We want to support our tinkerers.
That is exactly right. You're right. I never thought about it that way, right? Because like someone was asking me why I'm still in tech and like why I'm not bored. And I'm like, because there's new stuff coming up all the time. Because like
exactly,
Kubernetes wasn't a thing in the 90s and now it's a thing. And like there'll be another thing.
Absolutely.
That what like people don't realize when you have a little bit of time in the industry, you can look back and see like Emily, remember when everything on the planet ran on Apache?
Oh, yeah.
And then one Tuesday afternoon, Apache was gone and everything in the planet ran on Nginx. And then, you know what I mean? And then that got subsumed and now Nginx is just a thing that you use when you want Kubernetes. Like, it's just like, there's always going to be some new thing that's got a funny name that's going to be the thing that we're going to do tomorrow. Yeah. Raspberry Pis. I'm still explaining that it's not really pie. To like non-technical family members. How could you not be excited about playing with that crap?
On this note, I went to go get my regular dental cleaning, take care of your teeth. And my dental hygienist was like, oh, you work in tech? I was like, yeah. She's like, can you explain AI to me? I'm like, yes. So I'm sitting there trying to explain like, this is how it works. So she's like, oh, well, that makes sense. So I shouldn't be super afraid of this. Like, no, you're fine. Everyone's fine. Just breathe.
It's not the tech to be afraid of. It's the people who wield the tech that you should be afraid of.
The ethics of that. Absolutely. That's a whole other topic that we could crack open.
Well, that's actually a really hard thing because like I get my paycheck from Microsoft, but then I've also got a certain amount of what I call level privilege where I can get away with talking crap about stuff at Microsoft because it's like, I don't feel good about that product, but I feel good about this product. And that's also something you have to do. Like Kelsey Hightower is a great example of someone that if he says it sucks, no matter who he works for, probably sucks. So we should pay attention to that. Building that up is challenging because the next generation, if you're 23 and you have your first developer advocate job and something sucks, you got to be real careful. You could shoot yourself in the foot if you talk against your capitalist overlord.
But I also think that is a promise that we have to keep to ourselves and part of the ethics, I believe, of developer relations. I am useful to a company because I will tell them the truth. And I will not sign off on something that I don't believe in. And that was at Microsoft and Amazon. And now even here, like I believe in the products that we represent. I believe in the brands that we work with. That is really important to me because it's my authenticity and it's sort of my commitment to the broader industry and community that I will show up as my whole self and only say what I believe.
So let me shift a little bit and talk about some of the emerging influencers that I'm seeing, particularly in the tech space, where it feels like, and I feel bad saying this, but like, just bear with me and understand I do feel bad. It seems like you can just start asking open-ended questions about JavaScript and get 20,000 followers like in a week. And everyone thinks that, oh, now they're a JavaScript influencer. And all they do is they're like, React or Redux, what do you think? If I was going to start a new project today, should I use await and async? Like, that is lazy. Am I an old man who shakes my fist at the cloud to say that that is lazy? Am I gatekeeping influencers? Should I just shut up?
I don't think it's gatekeeping. I think that we are getting a little handshaky. I think it really has to do with, one, a changing ecosystem. It's, asking questions is part of the game. I think I'm
not against asking questions. I'm talking specifically about engagement bait.
Yes. Well, but then yes. So if someone is doing this constantly, sure. But I have absolutely tweeted things that people have thought were engagement bait, and it was just my brain.
So to be clear, I don't want to be defensive. I just want to make sure that you're clear about what I'm talking about are people who are clearly trying to go viral, asking generic object, not well-meaning, thoughtful young people who are getting involved in tech. I'm talking about people where their entire thread is
I know what you mean.
Yes,
and then, obviously I'm not going to sit here and name people, but I think there's absolutely examples of this. I think that comes through. I think people know, they may not know right away, right? And this is sort of what I was talking about at the beginning. You have these quick rises, and where they're especially not just the asking questions, the biggest thing for me is just being overly mean about things for no good reason.
Yeah, what is that about? When did that start?
I hate that so much. There's a huge difference between fair criticism and just being mean and spiteful. I don't think that resonates with people. So it's kind of fun in that moment because it's spicy and it's interesting and there's tea. But I think it catches on really, really fast. It's like, oh, this is not someone.
Yeah. And then they double down in the replies and they're like, I got y'all. You think that's hilarious,
Absolutely.
What a weird
I don't
hobby.
think that lasts long. Yeah. That's not how to make a decades-long career. That's a 5-year spend at most.
So I'm trying to figure out what our role is. I just wrapped you into our now, so you're a we.
I love it.
With the people who are older, because you've been 29 as long as I've known you. I want those 22 and 24-year-olds to have decade-long careers. I don't want them to burn out. But I feel like their insistence on feeling like they need to become an influencer is going to burn them out, and then they're going to get tired. I want them to do the tinkering.
Yes.
Talk about the tinkering.
Yes.
As opposed to what I feel is being inverted, which they're just talking a lot.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Go off, have fun, and then tell me what you did.
100%. So this first became a real issue for me while I was at Microsoft on the best developer relations team I'll probably ever work on. I love all of them. It became apparent that there is a polarization in developer relations, and I think any kind of visible person in tech, where on one end of the spectrum, you have shine, and on the other end of the spectrum, you have substance. And obviously, that perfect medium is going to be this ideal person where they know all the tech and they're so great. But I would say most of us fall somewhere between this line. And I think, you can talk about the ability to communicate, the ability to reach people, the ability to show up and be authentic. That's sort of on this sort of shine side where people really feel a connection. And then on the substance side is, do I understand the tech? Have I had those years of experience actually coding in a job? That is really important because it's this background that then informs all of this. I think if you get too far out on either side of that, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
But you're right in that they're focusing all on the shine and not on the substance. Yeah. And again, it's going to bite them at some point. You can do that for a couple of years. You can do that, but it's going to bite you.
Right. And I want, as an elder, to see them succeed, but I feel like I have to recognize my generational location and where I came into tech and understand that it's easy for old dude to look backwards and say, hang in there, kid, stick in the tech for 5 years when there's layoffs and there's interest rates and all this kind of stuff. Because if they would stick in for 5 years, they're going to have this wonderful 5-year career, but they need to not be chased out of tech by jerks. They need to not be laid off. There's all these different perfect storm things that have to work. And if that happens, though, stick in there, young person. In 5 or 10 years, you're going to have the war stories that make all the older influencers so darned interesting.
Well, and I'll use my career as an example. Not all of it was in tech, but I spun in mud for years. I mean, I tried so many different avenues to get where I wanted to go, and it was so frustrating. I was not achieving what I wanted to achieve. And even when I moved into tech, I thought, oh, what a waste. That was a complete waste of time. None of these skills I've learned will transfer, but all of those skills transferred. And that time spinning in the mud was really, really important, not just for my skills, but also growing my own grit and resilience, which, by the way, if you expect to get up in front of tens or hundreds of thousands of people and put yourself out there, you need, because you do have that 10% of people who are going to come after you and criticize you for no good reason.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to put on some dragon skin and survive that. So having all of that is really critical to things. But I think, this stick with it is really important.
It's so hard, though, because, again, someone who has been lucky enough to not have any major issues in 30 plus years, it's easy for me to say, stick with it. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Same thing with my kids, like telling any young person or any early in career person, it's going to be okay. Hang in there. When you just don't know if it's going to be okay is super challenging.
What other choice do we have? It's all falling apart. Godspeed. I mean, at some point, even
That's the
if
quote
it's
right
bullshit,
there. That's the quote, Emily.
That's your cold open. Even if we're not sure, I would rather think it's okay and move in that direction.
Yeah. Optimism.
And having hope is important. But our careers would have looked different in a different timetable. I think I went to code school by accident in the golden age of code school.
Mm-hmm.
I think I started in developer relations in the golden age of developer relations.
Yep.
And I think some of the missteps happening right now is really people looking at that era and thinking it can be replicated right now, but we live in a different world than we did 5-10 years ago.
Right. I was explaining to someone, I always give the advice to learn more about the base of the pyramid. So like if you feel like you're floating away or you're confused, if you don't understand, I don't understand React, go deeper, understand JavaScript. Yes. I don't understand JavaScript, understand C.
Yep.
People always say, you're just saying that. Well, but I grew up in the golden age of like C and assembler. So I drove stick shift before I learned how to drive a self-driving car.
Yes.
Is that good advice when in a world of Uber, Hanselman says, drive stick? I don't know if that works for everybody, but I do feel like I've always said this publicly, take the level that you know that you are and go one level below until you feel uncomfortable. And that's where you want to kind of like work that knot in your back, that muscle that feels tight, push on that until you feel comfortable.
I think it's excellent advice because at worst, it's not going to hurt you. And at best, it makes a huge difference because even if you come off with more confidence and belief because you understand how this abstraction is actually working, because that's all it is, right? We just continuously are moving ourselves up the stack. If you're able to go down deeper and understand what is actually happening under the hood and think about those architectures and think about the pros and cons of how to approach something, at a minimum, it's going to have you show up with more confidence and stand up taller and be able to kind of sit in rooms that previously you wouldn't be able to.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me and for standing up with confidence in everything that you do. Well, we see you in the community and we appreciate your work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I want to encourage folks to take a look at EmilyFreeman.io and her new venture, Freeman and Forrest. That's Forrest with 2 R's.com. You can find her all over Twitter. And by Twitter, I mean all over social, as well as checking out her books, DevOps for Dummies and 97 Things for Cloud Engineers. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and I'll see you again next week.